Part 3, The Rebellion Ignites. Heading, The Servants' War Begins. The sky above Eldros had turned into a living nightmare. Winged beasts with scales like polished obsidian circled the shattered palace, their riders clad in black steel that drank in the sunlight. At their lead flew a figure more shadow than man, his armor etched with silver veins that pulsed like a sickened heart, his face hidden behind a mask molded into the eternal scream of a tortured soul. The Shadow Blades had come, and with them, the true face of Voron's power. Kale's grip on Dawnbreaker tightened as the first of the winged beasts swooped low, its talons scraping grooves into the marble floor. The throne room, already in chaos, became a storm of screams and clashing steel. Nobles who had moments ago been content to watch his execution now scrambled for cover, their silks tearing on the broken stained glass that littered the ground. Kale! Lyrian's voice cut through the din. The sorcerer stood with her back to a pillar, her emerald robes now smudged with soot. The sword's power won't last forever. You need to run. Run. The word barely registered. Where could he go? The palace had been his prison for as long as he could remember, its corridors as familiar as the scars on his hands. But now, with Dawnbreaker's fire singing in his veins, the idea of fleeing felt like surrender. A shadow passed overhead. Kale barely had time to raise the sword before a spear of blackened steel struck the ground where he'd stood, shattering the tiles. The shadow blade who'd thrown it landed in a crouch, his movements eerily silent despite the weight of his armor. "The Regent wants you alive," the warrior hissed, his voice distorted by his helm. But he didn't say how alive. Dawnbreaker moved before Kale could think. The blade met the Shadowblade's dagger in a shower of sparks, their locked weapons trembling with the force of the clash. Up close, Kale could see the veins of silver in the enemy's armor, they weren't mere decoration. They pulsed, as though something beneath the metal was breathing. The Shadowblade kicked out, catching Kale in the ribs. Pain exploded through his side, but Dawnbreaker's fire flared hotter, dulling the agony. Kale retaliated with a slash that should have cleaved the warrior in two, but the blade passed through him like mist. An illusion? The real attack came from behind. A second shadow blade materialized from the gloom, his sword aimed at Kale's spine. A blur of emerald intercepted. Lyrian's staff met the blade with a sound like a thunderclap, her magic sending the assassin skidding back. "Move, princeling," she snarled. Kale didn't need to be told twice. Together, they fought toward a side passage, one of the servants' tunnels Kale had used 1,000 times to avoid the notice of drunken nobles. The Shadowblades gave chase, but Dawnbreaker's light drove them back like wolves wary of a torch. The hidden path. The tunnel was narrow, the air thick with the scent of damp stone and old blood. Kale's breath came in ragged gasps, his side throbbing where the Shadowblade had struck him. Lyrian moved ahead with the surety of someone who'd walked these paths before, her staff casting a pale green glow that just barely illuminated the way. "Why help me?" Kale demanded. "You serve Voron." Lyrian's laugh was bitter. "I serve Eldros. And Eldros has been bleeding under that man's boot for too long." A distant roar shook the walls. Somewhere above, the palace was crumbling. "They'll keep coming," Lyrian said. "Voron's made bargains with powers even I don't fully understand. Those silver veins in their armor. That's not metal. It's alive." Kale shuddered. "What does he want with me?" "You're the key," she said simply. "Dawnbreaker only answers to one bloodline. Voron spent years trying to replicate its power, but the sword rejects all but the true heir." "Then why not just kill me?" Lyrian stopped so abruptly Kale nearly collided with her. She turned, her eyes reflecting Dawnbreaker's glow like a cat's in the dark. "Because dead blood can't be used. Voron doesn't just want you gone, Kale. He wants to consume you." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. A sound from up ahead, footsteps, too light to be armored. Lyrian raised her staff, but Kale caught her wrist. "Wait." From the darkness emerged a slight figure wrapped in a tattered cloak. A girl, no older than 16, her face smudged with dirt and her eyes wide with fear. Mira? Cale breathed. The healer from the lower city, the only person who'd ever shown him kindness. She'd stitched his wounds after Voron's guards had taken their frustrations out on him, smuggled him salves when the winter cough had rattled his lungs. I heard the fighting, she whispered. I came to. A crossbow bolt sprouted from her shoulder. Mira gasped, her knees buckling. Cale lunged, catching her before she could hit the ground. Over her, he saw the shadow blade reloading, his silver-veined armor glinting in the gloom. Dawnbreaker's fire turned white-hot. Cale didn't remember moving. One moment he was crouched over Mira, the next he was driving the sword through the Shadowblade's chest. The warrior didn't scream. He laughed, even as his body crumbled to ash. Run, Cale growled to Lyrian. Get her out of here. And you? He looked down at Dawnbreaker. The sword's glow had dimmed, but its pulse was steady. Strong. I'm done running. Part 1, The Servant's Secret. Heading, A Nobody in a Palace of Lies. The grand palace of Eldros shimmered under the twin moons, its ivory towers stretching toward the heavens like the grasping fingers of a sleeping giant. Inside its gilded halls, where the air smelled of spiced wine and betrayal, a young man named Cale moved silently through the shadows. To the nobles who feasted in the great hall, he was nothing, just another faceless servant, his calloused hands bearing trays of roasted pheasant and goblets of crimson wine. His back was bent from years of unseen labor, his dark hair perpetually dusted with ash from the kitchens. But beneath his threadbare tunic, hidden against his ribs, lay a secret that could shatter the kingdom. Cale's fingers brushed the rough cloth wrapped around the object he carried, a sword, its hilt warm to the touch even through the layers of fabric. He didn't know why he'd kept it all these years. The old man who'd given it to him on his 12th name day had whispered only this, when the time comes, it will know what to do. Cale had scoffed then. What use did a kitchen boy have for a blade? But something in the weapon's quiet hum had kept him from selling it, from tossing it into the river. It felt alive. Tonight, that instinct would be tested. A commotion erupted in the throne room. Cale pressed himself against a marble pillar, peering around its edge. Regent Voron, a man whose cruelty was matched only by his ambition, stood atop the dais, his silver-threaded cloak pooling around him like spilled mercury. Before him knelt Lord Tereth, a nobleman known for his kindness, and his defiance. You dare question my rule? Voron's voice was a serpent's hiss, amplified by the vaulted ceilings. The bloodline of Eldros is extinct. Asterisk the throne is mine by right of strength. Asterisk. Tereth lifted his chin. The people whisper of a lost heir. They say the true king will return. Voron's smile was a knife slash. Then let them whisper, as you join your precious ghosts. He flicked a hand, and the executioner stepped forward, his axe gleaming. Cale's breath caught. He'd seen deaths before, servants who spoke out of turn, stable boys caught stealing, but this was different. Tereth's crime was hope. As the axe rose, something in Cale's chest burned. The wrapped sword at his side pulsed, as if answering a silent call. Without thinking, he stepped into the light. Stop. The word was quiet, but it cut through the throne room like a thunderclap. 100 heads turned. Voron's eyes narrowed. Ah! The kitchen rat has found its voice. He gestured to his guards. Remove him. Slowly. 2 armored men advanced. Cale's hands shook as he reached for the cloth-bound sword. He'd never fought before, never held a blade with intent, but the moment his fingers closed around the hilt, the world changed. The wrappings fell away, revealing a weapon of impossible beauty, its steel etched with runes that glowed like captured moonlight. The guards hesitated. Voron's face went pale. That's, the regent choked. That's Prince Aldric's sword. It was lost with him. The name struck Kale like a physical blow. Aldrich. The prince who'd vanished as a child, his body never found. The heir whose death had allowed Vorin to seize power. The sword thrummed in Kale's grip, its weight perfect, its balance an extension of his own body. As the first guard lunged, the blade moved on its own, parrying the strike with a shower of sparks. The second attack came, and Kale countered, his muscles guided by something older than instinct. The throne room erupted into chaos. Nobles screamed. Vorin bellowed for reinforcements. And Kale fought, each swing of the sword feeling less like violence and more like remembering. A voice, faint but clear, whispered in his mind, "You are the storm. You are the air." Then the doors burst open, and a dozen more guards poured in, crossbows leveled. Kale was outnumbered. Outmatched. But the sword in his hand laughed. Cliffhanger, the crossbows fired, but the arrows disintegrated midair, consumed by a sudden blaze of blue flame. Part 4, The Throne's Dark Truth. Heading, A Crown Stained with Betrayal. The smoke from the burning palace stung Kale's eyes as he stepped over the body of the fallen Shadowblade, Dawnbreaker humming in his grip like a living thing. The rogue knight's words still hung in the air, "You'll die alone, or live with us." Behind the knight, a dozen rebels waited in the flickering torchlight, their faces gaunt but their eyes burning with the same fire that now coursed through Kale's veins. The rebels' bargain. The knight removed his helm, revealing a face that was more scar than flesh. A jagged line ran from his temple to his jaw, pulling his lip into a permanent snarl. "Name's Dane," he said. "And you're either the answer to our prayers or the death of us all." Kale wiped soot from his brow. "I'm just a servant." Dane barked a laugh. "Servants don't wield Dawnbreaker. And they don't make Vorin piss himself in front of his court." He jerked his head toward the crumbling corridor behind them. "We've got maybe 5 minutes before the rest of those silver-veined freaks find us. You coming or not?" Kale hesitated. Lyrian had dragged Mira to safety, but Vorin's words echoed in his skull, "Dead blood can't be used." If the regent wanted him alive, it wasn't out of mercy. "Where's your base?" Kale asked. Dane's grin was all teeth. "Where Vorin would never think to look. The crypts of Eldros." The rebels moved like ghosts through the palace's underbelly, their path lit by bioluminescent fungi that clung to the ancient stone. The deeper they went, the colder the air became, until Kale's breath fogged before him. Finally, they reached a massive door carved with runes so old even Dawnbreaker's glow couldn't fully illuminate them. Dane pressed his palm against the stone. "This is where your ancestors rot." The door groaned open, revealing a cavernous chamber lined with sarcophagi. But these weren't mere tombs, each was a masterpiece of artistry, depicting the kings and queens of Eldros in their final repose. At the center stood an empty dais, its edges blackened as if by fire. "The first throne," Dane said. "Before Vorin's gilded monstrosity upstairs." Kale approached the dais, Dawnbreaker's light casting long shadows. Something about the scorch marks called to him. Without thinking, he reached out. Vision of the past. Fire. Screams. A king in tattered robes stood upon the dais, his hands raised to the heavens. "I accept the price," he roared. A voice answered from the darkness, a sound like grinding bones. "Then feed the throne, and it shall feed you." The king plunged a dagger into his own chest. His blood hit the stone, and the flames turned black. Kale staggered back, the vision vanishing as suddenly as it had come. His hands shook. What was that? Dane's expression was grim. "The truth. Every ruler of Eldros has made the same pact since the beginning. The throne demands sacrifice. Vorin figured out a way to cheat, he uses others' blood instead of his own." Kale's stomach turned. The executions. The disappearances. All fuel, Dane confirmed. But the throne knows. It's why his hair's gone white at 30. Why his hands shake when he thinks no one's looking. A distant crash echoed through the crypts. The rebels tensed. They found us, one whispered. Dane grabbed Kale's arm. You've got two choices, princeling. Walk away now, or claim that cursed seat and end this. Kale looked down at Dawnbreaker. The sword's glow pulsed once, as if in warning. Then the door exploded inward. Part 2, The Bloodline Awakens. Heading, A Sword That Chooses Its King. The air in the throne room crackled with energy as the crossbow bolts hurtled toward Kale, only to disintegrate in midair, reduced to ash by a sudden eruption of blue flame. The guards stumbled back, their weapons slipping from nerveless fingers. The nobles pressed themselves against the walls, their jewels and silk suddenly worthless in the face of this impossible power. Even Vorin, the man who had ruled Eldros through fear and deception, took an involuntary step backward, his silver-threaded cloak pooling around his boots like liquid metal. Kale stood at the center of the chaos, the sword, Dawnbreaker, thrumming in his grip like a living thing. Its runes pulsed with an otherworldly light, casting eerie shadows across his face. He could feel the weapon's will merging with his own, as though it were whispering directly into his mind, strike. Now. But Kale hesitated. He was no warrior. Just hours ago, he had been scrubbing pots in the palace kitchens, his only concerns the blisters on his hands and the ache in his back. Now, he held a blade that had once belonged to a prince, and the weight of that truth threatened to crush him. Impossible, Vorin spat, his voice trembling with rage. Aldrich died in the fire. His sword was lost. The name sent a jolt through Kale. Aldrich. The lost prince. The heir whose death had paved the way for Vorin's bloody reign. A memory flickered at the edges of Kale's consciousness, a fragment of fire, of screams, of strong arms shoving him into a hidden passage. His breath came faster. Was it real? The sword's glow intensified, as if in answer. Then, from the crowd, a voice rang out, clear and sharp as a bell. Look at his eyes. All heads turned. Kale didn't understand, until he caught his reflection in a polished shield nearby. His eyes, normally a dull brown, now burned with the same blue fire as Dawnbreaker's runes. The mark of the heir, whispered an old woman in the crowd, her gnarled fingers clutching at her shawl. The gods have returned him to us. Vorin's face twisted. Kill him, he roared. Kill the impostor. The guards surged forward, but Dawnbreaker moved faster. Kale's body was no longer his own, the sword guided him, its movements fluid and deadly. He parried a spear thrust, spun beneath a sword slash, and drove the pommel into a guard's temple, sending the man crumpling to the ground. Yet Kale felt no triumph. Only terror. What am I becoming? Then, a new sound cut through the clash of steel, a woman's voice, chanting in a language older than the palace itself. The court sorcerer, Lyrian, stepped from the shadows, her emerald robes swirling around her like mist. Her hands were raised, her fingers weaving intricate patterns in the air. Enough, she commanded. A shockwave of force rippled outward, knocking combatants off their feet. Even Kale staggered, though Dawnbreaker's glow flared brighter, shielding him from the worst of the impact. Lyrian's gaze locked onto Kale's. Drop the sword, boy. Let us see if it truly chooses you. Kale's fingers tightened around the hilt. I can't, he admitted. It won't let me. A murmur ran through the crowd. Vorin seized the moment. Sorcery, he cried. The boy is a puppet of dark magic. Lyrian ignored him. With a flick of her wrist, she sent a tendril of energy snaking toward Dawnbreaker. The sword reacted instantly, its blue flame lashing out like a whip, severing her spell midair. The sorcerer's eyes widened. Only Aldrich could wield Dawnbreaker thus, she murmured. And yet, you are not him. Kale's heart pounded. I don't know who I am. A deafening boom shook the palace. The stained glass windows shattered inward, and through the broken panes, Kale saw the sky darken, not with clouds, but with wings. Voron's reinforcements had arrived. Cliffhanger, the sky fills with armored riders on winged beasts, Voron's elite shadowblades. And at their head, a figure clad in black steel, his face hidden behind a mask shaped like a screaming skull.